the guy aside of you? We don't know him.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. This is a meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee of the Lowell City Council. Meeting pursuant to a motion filed by Councilor Elliott concerning the outbreak of violence and particularly shootings in several neighborhoods in Lowell. And the motion specifically was to call a meeting together with the district attorney and state officials, our state delegation, to discuss methods of how to reduce that violence and see what things we could do to improve the situation we find ourselves in. So I know some people have limited time and schedule, so I'd like to get right down to it. To my left is Councilor Elliott, and to my right is Councilor Vestnanoon. We are the members of the subcommittee. I know there are other councilors. I appreciate the entire state delegation being here, and others will be introduced as we go in through the meeting. So okay, so we'll begin the meeting and start with the roll call.
Chairman Martin.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Nguyen.
Here.
3 present.
Okay, I think, I know the police chief has some things to bring us up to date, but before we recognize him, I think the manager just want to make some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will also be brief. We do have the chief here tonight, as well as Kara Kreisel from District Attorney Leone's office. Unfortunately, District Attorney Leone was unable to be here tonight due to the wake and funeral of former Congressman Joe Early, who he's needed to be there. But the chief has a presentation to provide to the City Council tonight on where we are with regards to addressing the outbreak of violence that you described in your opening comments. I think the sort of the history of the city over the last several years has been good progress in stemming the tide of gang violence and stemming the tide of violence in general when we look at the statistics. But as we all know, over the last several months, there's been an uptick as a result of a variety of forces that I'm sure the chief will get into. Certainly, much of the progress that we've made over the last several years with regards to gang violence is the result of the partnerships in the community that we have with our nonprofit agencies, the district attorney's office, the police department, the school department, and really people coming together. In large part as a result of the Shannon grants that the city is able to obtain with the support of the delegation, State House delegation, which makes sure that those funds are always in place for the city of Lowell. So we've been able to really hit at some of the youth-oriented gang issues with great success. But what we've seen is, as I think the chief again will describe, as he's described in other meetings, is an uptick in adult gang violence and the variety of reasons for that. So I think that the actions that the police department has taken over the last several months, certainly the additional resources that have been made available to the police department, enable them to combat the issue of violence, in a much more coordinated fashion than otherwise would be the case. And so I'll turn it over now to the chief, if he could make that presentation and begin the discussion of this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce the members of the staff who are here this evening from the Lowell Police Department. Deputy Superintendents Deborah Friedel and Arthur Ryan are here. Captains Webb, Taylor, Richardson, Sergeant Lombard, Officer Carlos Ramirez, and Marianne Bellotta and Megan Ferreira. They were instrumental in putting together this presentation and work tirelessly in the Lowell Police Department to deal with the issues we deal with on a daily basis. So I wanted to begin by just giving us a rundown of the department's organizational structure. You have that in the presentation in front of you. Kind of breaks down the department in terms of operations and support and administrative functions, investigative functions, and so forth. There's been some discussion at prior meetings that I've attended about the staffing levels on the 3 platoons or shifts that consist of the Lowell Police Department. So I wanted to bring that to your attention today so you can understand and appreciate where each member of the department, every sworn personnel in the department is situated. On Platoon 1, the overnight shift, there are a total of 35 officers, all in patrol, captains, lieutenants, sergeant, and patrol officers. Platoon 2 is the day shift. There are 46 officers assigned to patrol on the day shift, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, and patrol officers. And then, in addition to that, there are a number of personnel on days who work in other functions, myself, the deputy superintendents. There are officers in administrative positions, crime analysis. There are 26 detectives. There's a licensing officer. 2 officers work in MIS, 4 in professional standards. 2 are prosecuting officers assigned to the Lowell District Court. We have a quartermaster. We have 6 officers currently in the police academy due to graduate on Thursday. Those officers will be assigned to the regular patrol force upon their graduation. We have 10 officers assigned to the schools. They're school resource officers throughout the city. 6 work in traffic, 2 work in training, and then we have 3 in the warrant unit, which is a total of 71. So the total for the day shift is 117 personnel if you take all of those in patrol and all of those in the other functions as well. On Platoon 3, the evening shift, there are 57 officers assigned to the patrol force and 16 assigned to the detective ranks, which totals 73. So currently, we have 225 sworn personnel in the Lowell Police Department of a total of, could have actually 231 in the budget, but we have 6 openings. Those openings occurred after the police academy began, and we began the hiring for new personnel in the police department. The academy began in June. So as you can see, openings currently and constantly exist within the organization as officers retire or resign from the organization. I then wanted to point out where our civilian staff are situated. We have a total of 99 non-sworn or civilian personnel in the department. On the overnight shift, there are detention attendants and dispatchers for a total of 11. Of course, on days, we have people in animal control, crime analysis, we have traffic supervisors, custodians, detention attendants, dispatch personnel, people who work in family services and finance. That we have 2 mechanics, 1 in MIS, 1 clerical staff and professional standards, 4 in records, research and development, the science shop, 2 working in my offices, administrative personnel in traffic and in training for a total of 47 on days. And on the evening shift, 3 detention attendants and 9 dispatchers. So that brings us to a total of 99 civilian staff in the Lowell Police Department. The breakdown of patrol officers, the officers who work in uniform by shift, we have a total of 26% or 35 officers assigned to Platoon 1, the overnight shift, 46 or 33% assigned to the day shift, Platoon 2, and 57 patrol officers are assigned to Platoon 3, which is a total of 41%. The vast majority of our officers in the department who work in patrol are assigned to Platoon 3, the evening shift, and the second most on days, and then the least on overnight shift. Of the 225 sworn personnel in the Lowell Police Department, 91% or 205 of them are assigned to either patrol, enforcement assignments, or investigative assignments. So there are 20 officers assigned in positions like administrative positions that don't actually do those other functions, which are patrol, enforcement, and investigations. Those positions basically are positions like myself, the 2 deputy superintendents, some other captains, and others in the department who do those tasks. Calls for service by shift. Right now, year-to-date, up to 10/31, we have a total of 39% of the calls for the department are on Platoon 3, the evening shift, and another 39% on days. So it's pretty evenly split in terms of the calls for service. and then Platoon 1 has 22%, 16,000 calls for service. So you can see that in terms of calls for service and activity, Platoons 2 and 3 are pretty equally matched. What do we do? Average calls per day, 249 calls. 46 of the proactive category. Those are officers either doing directed patrols at neighborhoods where they need extra attention, warrant checks, or other interactions with the community. And we have many of the calls we take are medicals, both with Trinity and the fire department. There's an average of 17 disturbance calls per day, 12 crashes, traffic crashes, 11 domestic calls, 11 alarms, 10 service calls, which is, it could be a lockout of a motor vehicle or a home or something along those lines. 8 theft calls, 7 fight calls. So this is the average per day. It also includes other things like 911 hang-ups, assaults, vice activity, B&Es, weapons violations, and so forth. We average 16 arrests every day in the Lowell Police Department. The CompStat crimes that we study bi-weekly at our CompStat, those are quality of life issues, concerns that we have. They include aggravated assault, burglary, motor vehicle breaks, disorderly conduct, primary vandalism, robberies, secondary vandalism, and shoplifting. The aggravated assaults occur mostly on the Platoon 3, the evening shift. Burglaries mostly occur on days, people who are not home. Car breaks, interestingly enough, occur on the overnight shift. So you can see that the crimes are broken down. Vandalism occurs a lot on the overnight shift, more robberies on Platoon 3. So the crimes are broken down basically when people aren't home during the day. They break into houses when cars are left overnight in someone's driveway or in front of the house, largely left unlocked. The cars are broken into, so that's how the crimes are broken down. As you can see that of those CompStat crimes, 33% occur on Platoon 1, the overnight shift, 31% on days, and 36% on the evening shift. So it's a pretty equal match. Getting into the gang crimes that have taken place, gang-related violent crime has been pretty much of a roller coaster ride since January of 2011. We've had some months when it's been pretty low and some months when it's been high, up to 7. We had, in June of 2012, just before the uptick, we had 0 gang-related violent crimes in the city. And then it went up, shot up into August, and then shot down again in September and went up in October. And then shots fired and weapons offenses, they were very low for a considerable period of time, from spring of 2011 right up until the spring and the summer of 2012, and then we had that uptick, as you know, which occurred in August, September, and October, but now we're seeing a bit of a decline. Shots fired calls across the city. You see a number of incidents where shots fired incidents have taken place. You can see the predominant locations are in Lower Centerville, the Acre, and in the Lower Highlands. However, it should be noted that only 32% of these calls were verified by evidence being found at the scene, which means they found shell casings for the most part, or a firearm. Some of these other calls, we get a call for shots fired, it turns out potentially it's firecrackers or a car backfiring or something along those lines. So we were only able to verify 32% of these actual shots fired incidences actually occurring with evidence at the scene. These are gang-related shot-fired incidents. These are the ones that took place starting in August of this year all the way up until October 31st. And you can see, again, Lower Highlands, a couple in Centerville, the Acre, and so forth. So what have we done since this uptick in crime took place? We've taken 13 guns off the streets of the city. In those 13 incidents, 8 arrests were made in conjunction with the seizure of those firearms, and 1 warrant was applied for. 7 of those 8 arrests involved a gang member, and 5 of those were arrested for possession of a firearm, and the other 2 were being in the company of an individual who was in possession of a firearm. We've made 86 drug arrests. We see there's a nexus between the violent crime in the city the gunfire, the gunshots, the gun incidents, as well as the drug incidents. So that there's definitely a connection that we're seeing. As the manager had pointed out, these are older gang members who are involved in these crimes. We're not seeing the young kids doing this. It's the older kids in their late 20s and early 30s. We've also arrested gang members. 12 suspected gang members were arrested for other violent crimes, 6 for drug offenses, warrants, and so forth, 16 for other offenses. So we've done a lot of work in trying to deal with this problem and locking people up and taking guns and drugs off the street of the city. Our partners continue to be the partners we've worked with for a long, long time. The federal agencies at the top, FBI, DEA, ATF, and ICE, Mass State Police. The DA's office has worked with us on a regular basis. As you know, the Sheriff's Department works with us, continues to do so. NEMLEC, our regional police response unit, probation. We work with the Greater Lowell Reentry Partnership as we scrutinize people who are being reentered into the community from correctional facilities. And of course, the programmatic work, the Boys and Girls Club, UTEC, the Lowell Community Health Center, the Career Center, Safety First, which is a program we have in place that kind of monitors the gang members in the city with people from the Sheriff's Department, the DA's office, and other agencies. And we have our Lowell Youth Development Collaborative meetings held monthly, chaired by Carol Cowan, the city manager, and the district attorney. And we continue to work to curtail the gang issues that with all our partners there. Strategies that we've implemented, there are a number of strategies, probably too many to mention, but you can see that we've done a lot of things here. Some of the work we've done is pretty innovative. We have recently looked at the possibility of establishing a police athletic league as a result of Councilor Noon's request to look at after-hours programs or after-school programs in the city. We continue to work with a number of agencies. We have our Smart Policing Initiative. We have the Burn Grant. We do the Summer Police Academy, which is very active. We continue our partnerships with the neighborhood groups, which is very important. We've recently worked with a university to talk about conflict resolution strategies, which we'll be doing some training on next week, and Captain Taylor's been taking the lead on that. We certainly have our Shannon Grant partners. So we're doing a lot of work with multiple partners and strategies in the city to deal with these incidents that we've dealt with. So that's pretty much it. I know that you may have some questions regarding this presentation, and there's many other people here who would be glad to weigh in on what they see as the issue and how we can continue to work to deal with this problem.
Thank you, Chief. Before we get into questions and answers, I'd like to also acknowledge some people here in addition to members of the subcommittee. Mayor Murphy is here, Councilor Rita Mercier, Councilor John Leahy, Councilor Marty Laurie, Councilor Joe Mendonça, as well as Senator Donahue, Representative Golden, Representative Nangle, and Representative Murphy. And you introduced Kara Crystal from the DA's office, and I know Michael Coelho, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, from the State Department of Public Safety, and we appreciate your being here as well. I don't know if any of you folks have remarks that you want to make before we open it up to questions, but happy to hear from whoever may, and feel free to join in the discussion at any time. If first, members of the subcommittee.
Well, I don't know, we've invited members of the delegation here and other officials, district attorney's office. I don't know if they have anything to add before we get into the question and answers.
Yes, Representative Murphy. If we could just ask you to press the button so the green light is on.
I used to be in a city councilor, so I didn't know how to. It comes on automatically in the House. Seeing that, as I viewed that presentation, excellent presentation, seeing that many are, probably a majority of the incidents occurred in my district, I feel personally responsible to help out. But I have to thank Senator Donahue, Representative Golden, and Nangle. This past session, the Shannon grants, you know, always were at in jeopardy, and we fought hard to make sure that the money is there. And I just ask that the superintendent and the city manager would at least communicate with us. As I see some of your partners are members of the, the state police, Department of Public Safety with Mike Coelho here, is if there's any help that we can give by asking them for additional help to address this issue. And obviously, Mr. Manager, as we've already met as part of the budget process, if there are monies that would be necessary or hopefully made available to address this issue. So whatever help we can give, I'm there to help out in any way, because I know the Lower Highlands neighborhood, the group Tire, and I mean, we've met endlessly over these issues. The Highlands, we just don't feel safe. And I know you're doing the best job you can, and I always feel that the police department has done a wonderful job, but still there's a sense of insecurity that we have to address, and I think whatever we can do to help that out, I'm there for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Representative. And you're right, that members of the Lower Highlands Neighborhood Group are here, but all the neighborhood groups, and in fact, there's a citywide neighborhood group coalition that's formed, not just for this issue, but certainly because of this issue in part. So I think we all need to find some solutions to make things better than what they are. And I think that's part of the discussion. I know, Councilor Laurie, you had something you wanted to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I do have one question. I want to thank the neighborhood groups and the delegation for being here, along with the police department. A couple of weeks ago, it became known to basically the general public in Massachusetts of the scandal at the drug lab. And there's a possibility of people being returned who should be serving a sentence. And I was wondering, A, if the police department has a number of cases that they're looking at that may come back. And I know the delegation and the State Senator Eileen Donoghue has addressed the issue for us in terms of funding. And I was just wondering where we are in that process, how many cases we could anticipate coming back. Thank you.
I would defer to the Assistant District Attorney. I believe she could probably answer that question better than I could.
An exact number. We've been working with the police department in the jails to try to know ahead of time. It's moving very, very slowly, this process, just because once a motion is filed, we're first targeting the individuals that are currently incarcerated. It looks like right now the number is fairly small. And I don't think we've had any released yet, but Lieutenant Rowan from the Lowell Police, working with Safety First in the city, we're working to get a list of those people, so we'll know ahead of time what we're facing, but I don't anticipate an onslaught of individuals being released at once.
Thank you.
Wasn't, Kara, I think someone had mentioned to us a while back, was it Suffolk County that is mostly targeted with this? Is that my understanding that we heard down in Boston?
Yeah, Suffolk County has the brunt, and then there's some districts in the
Norfolk,
southern
but it was
part of the
mainly
state.
Suffolk, yeah.
Senator Donoghue.
Just in follow-up to Council Laurie's motion, Council Laurie had presented a motion which we had responded to, and that, just so people at home understand, the request was that we be ready to access whatever funds would be necessary for the community. And based on that, obviously, we did get information from A&F, who had already put out a call, and the district attorneys, including District Attorney Leone, had made the request for the funds necessary. So at least at and when the time comes that the cases are coming up and people are being released, the funds have been spoken for so that we're not caught short on funding. As far as reentry into communities, that may be another issue down the road, but first we're waiting to see how these cases process through the system.
And I want to thank you for that quick response from the administration, the police department, district attorney's office, and your office, along with the delegation. I thank you for the quick response.
Okay, thank you. Chief, I have a question, if I might. One of the slides here, you talked about the arrests that have been made in the last few months, and I know there have been prior meetings, and you've presented a little bit about the specific crimes that have, given rise to this concern, the shootings toward the end of the summer in particular. But, and I know there are ongoing investigations, and it's hard to comment publicly about the nature of some of that, but is there anything you can tell us by way of update as to, you know, who's responsible for these crimes, you know, where this is in the system, what you've learned maybe from your investigation that would be helpful for preventive things going forward? I think when an incident happens, everybody wants to see it successfully prosecuted, but I think as important to the residents of the city is to know that the police are on top of this and perhaps in a position to prevent future occurrences.
I think what's most notable to me, although we've had some success and made some arrests in several of these incidents, there's been a complete lack of cooperation from the individuals who were targeted, for the most part, in these crimes. People who were either shot or victims of violence refused to cooperate with the police and would not give us or provide us the information we needed to successfully investigate these crimes. And I think that is indicative to me that these individuals are hiding things from the police that they don't want the police to know, obviously, because I can assure you that these are not random attacks. These are targeted attacks because these people have some type of a beef going on with the individuals who targeted them. And for example, if there was a drive-by shooting or an incident where there's a home invasion, that's very likely a targeted event, not a random event, and that's what we've seen with these events in the last few months. They're really very, very, very hesitant to work with us and provide us the information we need to make arrests in these cases.
Okay. So what do you do in that situation? I mean, how is that, I mean, you increase patrols, but is that helpful?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we can do is we get people in front of a grand jury. We, compel them to testify. Sometimes they take the fifth, so it's not that easy. But we have indeed put extra patrols in the neighborhoods where these crimes have occurred. We've put money that we've had, grant money that has been available, and then some city overtime money as well. So we target the timeframes and the locations where the incidents have occurred, and that has had an impact. I think it's really kind of prevented some further retaliation or incidents from taking place. So our officers are on foot, they're in their police cars, they're on bicycles, they're on motorcycle. Some officers are in plain clothes doing surveillances and monitoring these neighborhoods. And as you know, we've had very few incidents in the last few weeks.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, could you comment on the recent incident in Pawtuckaville that was more or less a home invasion? And is that, if there's anything at all, can you share with us on that case?
Well, I can tell you that that matter is still under investigation. I will not get into the specifics of that case because it is still under investigation, but we don't believe that was a random incident at all.
I just to comment on what you said earlier with the question by chairpersons, the reluctant or the lack of cooperation from witnesses or people who live in the area. It's difficult for you because I guess as you rely on them who live on the street and community to help you help them. But usually that's not the case. That's my experience too with the DA office.
Yeah, sometimes people won't cooperate because they're fearful, and sometimes they won't cooperate because they don't want to implicate themselves in any misconduct.
Is there a mechanism in the cases that they're fearful for their life or their safety or their family? Is there a mechanism to assist them? Maybe either you or Kara can comment on that.
Sure. I think just to echo something the chief said, these cases that people aren't cooperating or they're coming in and they're not being truthful, it's not that they're going away, it's just that they take a lot longer to investigate. So it takes a lot longer to get somebody immunity or disprove, the untruthful things they're saying. So obviously they're longer-term investigations. There might not be an arrest the very next day, but they don't just go into a filing cabinet and aren't worked on. As far as safety, there's a program we've used recently, the Witness Protection Program, which does give funds. The difficulty in that is that a lot of times the witness or the victim needs to come up with the funds to move, and then they're reimbursed, so that's a little bit of a difficulty. But, you know, if it's an immediate threat, there's obviously funds to relocate people or put them up in a hotel if it's an immediate. From my experience in the city, it's not necessarily that people are fearful, it's more a code on the street that nobody wants to talk about what other people did, or nobody wants to be labeled a snitch.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prior to me filing the motion to have this meeting, I thought it was important, I do think it's important to have a meeting and not just to go over statistics and to let us know what is happening, that there is safety. Safety is an issue in the city, but also to bring parties together to find out what is it that we are doing that's not working, and what have we done in the past that has worked. And one of the charts did reflect those peaks and those areas or those timeframes when violence did decrease.
Mm-hmm.
So my question, Chief, is what are you employing differently now, or is it too hard to pinpoint exactly what can be done to address this spike? Because I know it's not just one area, you know, vandalism and a host of other crimes, but in particular it's when there's so much good going on in the city, but it's when we see headlines of shootings and stabbings, you know, problems downtown that we are and will continue to address, that people in the community reach out to members of the council and say, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm scared. What is going on? So, I know you had a meeting before, and I think it's helpful. But I also think it's important to let people know what is taking place, even on a regular basis, or particularly when we do see spikes, you know, in crime. You know, we all regularly hear from our neighborhood leaders. I think they are our eyes and ears on in the neighborhoods more than, you know, maybe even more than all of us here. And they are concerned, and they've asked for our help. And I think that's why we've asked the delegation to come and Commissioner of Public Safety, the District Attorney's Office. What else can we do? We need your help. I mean, you know you need their help. And I believe that you have put in together some very good strategies if I have sat here and listened and seen the results. I mean, I did look at one chart you presented, and it's shots fired. And maybe some of them are valid and some of them can't be verified, but to me, it's somewhat of a, you know, are people perceiving now when they see the shootings and crimes, are they just perceiving that shots are being fired in the neighborhood? And lastly, I put myself in the position, there was a woman that came, Council Rita Mercier filed a motion, and she came and she spoke, I thought, very passionately, she lives in Back Central, about shots being fired into her house. And to me, I say, boy, what would I do? What would I want my elected officials and public safety officials to do if that were my house? And I would want a response. I would want an immediate response. And I know you're doing that, but we do have limited resources. But you know, we've got to respond. And so it goes back to my original question: what has worked in the past, and what are you employing now, so we can let people know this is what we're doing, and this is what has worked, and this is what is going to work again.
One of the things that we recognized when this initial violent incidents that occurred, where there were some people who were incarcerated for a period of time, were now coming out of jail and were probably part of this increase in the violence. These people had came back to the street life and continue to engage in violent activity. So we're trying to scrutinize them. We're keeping an eye on those individuals. We on a bi-weekly basis, we analyze whether crimes are occurring in the city, and we're putting our resources at those locations. We're also engaging the citizens in the neighborhoods. Obviously, the 3 sector captains, the shift captains work on a regular basis with those individuals and getting some insight into where the problem locations are and trying to put our resources there. You know, we're not going to, we've added some new programs. You can see that there were several that we indicated in the presentation, but we're also reflecting on, you know, the meaning of community policing, cops in neighborhoods, trying to deter the crime, and that's what we're using these officers in foot patrols, bicycle patrols, being in these neighborhoods where these crimes are occurring to try to deter the violence from taking place. But with all of that being said, and all the work that we're doing, the vexing issue that we're dealing with is the tremendous availability of guns. Not just in Lowell, but across the Commonwealth and in other states as well. Firearms are so plentiful. And we know that it's very easy for a gang member or a drug dealer to get their hands on a gun. We work and we take literally hundreds and hundreds of illegal firearms off the streets of this city on a yearly basis. And I can tell you that we work closely with the ATF. We have one of our detectives assigned, a TFO, a task force officer with the ATF. Their whole focus is firearms. But how do we prevent? How does a city like Lowell put some type of protocol or strategy in place to prevent guns from getting into the hands of the young people in this city? That is a very difficult challenge for us. And I know that there are certain penalties for possession of a firearm, and people are mandated to go to jail for 18 months, and we do everything we can, working with our federal partners, our state partners on these gun issues. And we hope that our efforts will pay off and we'll see another decrease in the violence as we go forward. But it is, quite honestly, that the plentiful number of firearms that are available is an answer I don't really have an easy answer for at this point in time. And it's more than just it's a statewide issue. It's a national issue. And as you know, gun violence in this country is at epidemic proportions, and it continues to be a problem here in the city of Lowell.
Chief, when Mr. Chairman, I just have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Chief, when you first started, you came before this subcommittee, and the message, or the last time we had an escalation of a problem with gang and gun-related violence, that was the same message that you had then, and I didn't forget it then, and it's still a problem that we need to work on now, which would lead me to a question to the assistant district attorney. Do we see, what are the laws? Is it, I mean, I know we want stricter laws. You mentioned that years ago. Has it changed, and do you see, how do we as a community go about, I guess, enforcing the laws, and when it gets to your level, are repeat offenders or gun violations, I don't want to say being dismissed, but, are they being incarcerated?
I think, the laws, we have some of the best gun laws in the country, so I can't blame it on the laws. The one, I guess if you want to call it a loophole, that we've been seeing lately is we've made a commitment to the police department in the city that if a gang member comes before the court with a firearms charge, that we'll file a 58A, which is basically a dangerousness hearing, to have these people held. Well, that works if the gun's in the car or the gun's, outside of the house. But if the police go to a house and do a search warrant and they find a gun, well, that gun doesn't qualify for dangerousness. So, immediately to get people off the street, if they, some of these gang members are very young, they don't have any prior history, so to keep them off the street, it's bail, which bail is just, are they going to come back to court? Somebody who's a lifelong Lowell resident has never, not come to court when they're supposed to. Our only avenue is dangerousness, and so if the gun is in the house, that's one of the difficulties just recently that we've started to see. But, we're indicting all firearms charges. We don't have to. The minimum sentence on just a possession of a firearm is 18 months. But, if there's a prior gun or drug offense or some violent offense, we obviously enhance the charges. So we are prosecuting them. It just, as you all know, the wheels of justice are very slow. So on the immediate front, I think the only small loophole would be the fact that we can't have anyone held on a gun crime if the gun's in the house.
Thank you. So, Chief, is it the interstate trafficking of guns that is the problem? You said it's a national issue, but focusing just in our state, how do we clamp down on how do we clamp down on access to guns?
Well,
Is that the $64,000 question? I mean, I'm sure we're not alone.
yeah.
But it's, I don't want to say terrifying, but it's getting to the point where, you don't know who or when or why somebody may, any car, any,
Yeah.
people on the street.
We do know that a number of firearms come into the Commonwealth and come into Lowell from outside the state, but most of the guns come from within the state. You may recall a couple of years ago on Dublin Street, a man's home was broken into, and there were dozens of firearms stolen. They ended up in the hands of criminals. Representative Murphy and I, and District Attorney Leone, talked about passing a state law that would require homeowners, people who have firearms, multiple firearms in their homes, to have some type of a security system to prevent this from happening, to put an alarm system in place, to notify the local authorities that you have dozens of guns in your house and different calibers, and that would be a safety issue for responding police and fire personnel. Representative Murphy can tell you what happened when we made that proposal.
It's frustrating as you talk about the amount of firearms. That's the issue. And this city council unanimously supported us to file that legislation, everybody here. And you can't imagine, after we filed that legislation, how we were vilified and criticized once you get outside of Lowell, because there's so many people. I was getting emails from across the United States, members of NRA, that were vilifying us for filing that legislation. So it's a very difficult thing. We know that it's the abundance of firearms, but to try and stop that statewide, it's almost impossible to do. Not because we don't want it, because others just believe it's a constitutional right. I always say to them, well, fine, when the Constitution was written, they had flintlocks, so let's, reduce them just to flintlocks, but they want the most powerful firearms they can get. But it's frustrating. We'll keep trying the fight, but it's frustrating.
In that Dublin Street case, this man, this individual who we did charge with a crime at some point, let it be known that those firearms were in his house. The house was not occupied. The firearms were not properly secured, in my opinion. The house did not have an alarm. The guns ended up on the street, multiple guns, some high-powered weaponry. Some have been recovered, some have not. Some people have been arrested, but many of the firearms stolen in that break are still out there. And that's how a lot of these guns get into the community, through house breaks. Firearms are stolen from homes, and then they get into the hands of the criminal element. So, despite, and with that being said, we do have, some of the best firearm laws in the country. The Assistant District Attorney mentioned that, but when we asked for, I thought was a common sense measure to this type of issue, that you secure your home, have an alarm, notify the police, that met with extreme opposition.
Thank you, Chief. I think Councilor Mercia had a comment or a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to thank all the neighborhood groups for being here. They are our eyes and ears. They do a tremendous amount of work. Our State House delegation, thank you, and our District Attorney's Office being represented, and the Chief of Police, thank you very much. I think we have many goals here in a city this size, because this city draws in a multiple of different type of people of all sorts, good as well as bad, come into our city. So I believe that two of our goals that is very prevalent should be education of our youth, to tell them how do we prevent a youth from joining gangs in the first place, the dangers of being in gangs, and what do we do about preventing it. Sometimes you go into the school system and you talk about this and you hear the children say, I'm going to join a gang, my brother's in a gang. So you got to stop that. We got to get that thought out of their heads. Second goal that's very instrumental is try to diffuse these gangs from taking place. I know there's a multitude of gangs in the city. We don't want to focus on them or derive any attention to them, direct any attention, but they're there. And it's frightening when you know that you think you're in the safety of your home and a bullet flies through the window and the wall or comes in. That's very frightening, especially in certain portions of this city. These are the things that we have to be vigilant on. So I want to know, and I know that you can't tell us publicly, I want to feel as an elected official that I can be reassured that things are being done to prevent things from happening. I know that we can't prevent everything from happening. We're not seers, we're not psychics, we don't know when domestic violence is going to break out, we don't know when someone's going to get shot, but we can put safety measures in place to monitor these gangs. And I don't want to go into it, but I would like to know secretly in an executive session, in a confidential letter or some sort, what is being done to monitor these gangs, because I think that when tragedy happens, we're on top of it. Then when things balance out and the uptick is down, we tend to slack off, and that's when things happen. We have to be on this all the time. So I just want to know what, I don't want you to tell me publicly, I know you have strategy. At least I hope there's strategy in place that you can be on top of these gangs to let them know that we're watching you. And I want that message being sent to them. And lastly, we do have laws in place. We had, at least I thought, a 1-year mandatory jail sentence for anybody caught with a gun that wasn't theirs, wasn't registered, wasn't licensed, and yet we could create these laws all day long, but then a good, smart lawyer comes along and says, well, we can defend them this way, that way. And I know, I'm sorry for my attorneys over here, but really, we don't have truth in these laws. And I think that we should set an example and say, my God, like in Andover, you walk on the sidewalk, cars stop to a halt, you know that you can cross the street and you're not going to get hit by a car. We need to have that same message here on a higher scale that, ooh, don't carry a gun in Lowell, you're going to get it. You know, you won't get away with this. So this is the thing that I want to say, that we need to be on top of this. I know we can't predict what's going to happen, but we can put safeguards in place to work our way to let them know that we're watching them, and we're going to have truth to the sentencing that's going to take place. I don't care if you have Clarence Darrow, we're going to get you, and you're going to do your time if you're carrying a gun that isn't yours, isn't registered. You know, we're babying society to the point where they're overpowering us, and that's not fair, that we got to lock our doors and get an alarm system while the thug is out terrorizing this city. It's not fair to the good people that live here, and I don't appreciate it. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Just to address a couple of the points you made, Counselor, you mentioned the gang education. We do employ the 10 school resource officers that we have in the middle schools and the high school, working in a program called GREAT, Gang Resistance Education and Training. 2 officers in particular do this training throughout the city, and their whole goal is to keep these kids away from gang violence and drugs and other harmful activities. So that's just an example. As far as us scrutinizing who these gang members are, we know who they are. We're well aware of who they are, and our Safety First meeting that we have in collaboration with the DA's office and other law enforcement agencies, probation and so forth, identifies these individuals bi-weekly. So we're constantly keeping track of these people. We're looking to see if there are any warrants on them. We're looking to see if there's anything we can do to lock them up. We do home visits. Our officers, the members of our gang unit, go to the homes of these individuals, and they basically drop in and say, just to let you know, we're keeping an eye on you. We want you to know that you're not being left free to roam this city to partake in any activity you want to. When these individuals are seen driving automobiles, one of the biggest, and we're continuing to do this, one of our strongest strategies was the motor vehicle stop. The motor vehicle stop often resulted in us being able to check that motor vehicle for any firearms, illicit substances, maybe drugs. We were locking people up because they were carrying the guns in the cars. So if they know that they're prone to being stopped by the police for a motor vehicle violation, a red light, a stop sign, whatever the case may be, then we have an opportunity to investigate further if there's a gang member in the car and maybe uncover a firearm. So our officers definitely are doing that work. They're very, very proactive. They're not sitting back, waiting for that call to come in. They're being aggressive. They're being assertive. They're looking at the locations and the individuals and the neighborhoods where these individuals are having partaken in this activity. So our drug unit, very effective, works very, very hard to take drugs off the street on a regular basis. As you know, we're dealing with I think what we've seen here is a nexus between the gang and gun violence and drugs. As these older gang members become more sophisticated after they spend some time in prison, they come out and they see there's a lucrative business ahead of them. They can see that dealing drugs is something they want to get involved in, and then that puts them in opposition to an adversarial relationship with another drug dealing gang, and then you see the potential for the violence, and that's why they won't cooperate, because they're both involved in illegal activities.
Thank you,
know,
Chief.
if there's any members of the department that are here that would like to add anything to that, because I certainly, come on up. They'd rather let me take it all.
Representative Golden.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and through you to the Chief. Chief, congratulations first and foremost, the strategies, the programs. These are great ideas. But as far as the monies that are coming into the city, when it comes to the grant programs that the executive office has provided a list to us, when it comes to things like the Shannon Grant, Safe and Successful Youth, it's a two-part question here, I guess. The first part of it is that money flexible enough to use it in the ways that you deem it's necessary? That's the first portion of it. And the second portion, if it's not, since we're coming up to a time where we can start to file legislation for the upcoming session, is there something, can we meet, and I'm sure the answer is yes, as it always has been in the past, whether it's been with the Commissioner of Probation, should we meet, can we meet to discuss what needs to become more flexible or how we can get additional funds into the city?
Right.
So just the first thing, is it flexible enough to you, or is it not?
Well, I mean, when we apply for these grants, there are certain mandates, requirements of the grant, that we spend the money in a certain way. We have seen flexibility, particularly with the Shannon Grant, and the Shannon Grant is not just for the law enforcement people, it's for the programmatic side, the Boys and Girls Club, UTEC, so many other organizations in the city who prevent crime from happening by engaging these young people in a positive way. They're also beneficiaries of this money. But I'll tell you that we've been very grateful to this Commonwealth, to the Shannon Grant, the work all of you did to keep that funding alive, to make sure that the city got more than its fair share, which was very important. But those funds are starting to dry up. As you know, every year the Shannon Grant gets smaller and smaller and smaller. In a city like Lowell, that means a lot. I mean, it really does. So, all these grants that we apply for, we have very specific goals in mind, strategies that we have to employ when we ask for these monies. And when they give us the money, they say, okay, you can have the money, but this is what you're going to do, because that's what you said you were going to do. You're not going to go out and buy a police car with it. You're not going to do. But there are times when they can be flexible, particularly when it comes to deployment and things like that, putting extra officers in neighborhoods where there are problems. We can do that. So it is, I don't know if you want to be necessarily completely flexible and leave. I think that we would spend the money wisely, but they might be concerned about some other departments who might use the money to cover some of their shortfalls in other areas. I don't know.
Excuse me, through you, Mr. Chairman. So as far as you're concerned, the grants that are put forth are flexible enough that you don't have an issue with trying to get your job done? Because, I think myself and my colleagues feel as though we try to get the money to you because you know exactly how to spend it,
Yeah.
and where to spend it in an appropriate fashion.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, it's flexible enough, and we, oftentimes we'll make a call down, Mary Ann will make a call down and say, how can we utilize the funds in a different way, and they pretty much, concur with that request.
The second part of the question was just, is there an opportunity for us to sit down before probably the end of this year where the delegation can look at potentially filing legislation that would be beneficial to the city? If there's ideas that you and your command staff have, I'm sure that the Senator, myself, and Representative Murphy and Nangle would love to sit down and have that.
I would absolutely be delighted if the four of you or any of you could come in and join us at a command staff meeting. We have them on Thursday mornings at 10 o'clock. In the EOC at the police department. We could have kind of basically a general discussion, a give and take, so to speak. We could have the district attorney's office there. And these people behind me, some of the brightest people I know. They have tremendous ideas, great thoughts, initiatives that they could put forth that I'd love to have all of you here. That would be
you,
fantastic.
Chief.
I'm definitely going to set that up
Thank you.
before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen to some of the comments the representative from the Attorney General's DA's office was making, and the frustrations when the arrests are made in the courts with the letting them out on bail. It's very frustrating to sit here in the city. We put a lot of resource into the police departments. They do a great job. The DA's office does a great job. And then it goes to trial. We had a case a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, I think 10 or 12 Johns were arrested. They went to court and nothing happened. You know, and I'm looking out at the neighborhood groups. These are the people who live in the neighborhoods. We're talking not only quality of life, but the integrity of the neighborhoods in this city. And to see a judge make a ruling that for about $150 or $200, after the resources from the police department, the resources of the city, the people in the neighborhood, and we just watch this go free. Is there anything we can do as a city government to request the judges to respect the integrity of our cities? I know for many cases, if you go to trial, there's a victim impact statement. Well, what about the cities? Is there anything we can do to help the police department, to help the district attorney's office, to get across to these judges? This is the integrity of the city. And every time they release them, every time. I pick up the paper and I see prostitution cases in the towns that I think are more harshly defended by the judge. And I have to sit there and think, is this an economic, social question? Oh, it's only the cities as compared to a suburban community. And sometimes I get that feeling. And I guess my question, and it is my question, is there anything we can do as a government to help the police department, the district attorney's office, deal with these judges as an impact statement and ask for help?
I don't, the judges are obviously a different branch. What I've discussed with people in my office, and I think it's worked to some extent, is that it's on us, the DAs, and to some extent our communication with the community and the police department to educate the judges, to tell the judges why prostitution has such an effect on the city, to educate them as to why this 18-year-old gang member with no record needs to be held. So, without telling the judges what they have to do because they don't take kindly to that, I think it's on us as the DA's office and working with, obviously, the community and the police department to educate them, and let the judges know how significant these cases are to the city. But beyond us educating them,
There's nothing we can do to assist you at all?
I don't think so. Sometimes it's a matter of the press too, letting it known out there how these issues are affecting the city, but obviously victim impact statements are a little different than at arraignment, us coming in, and the judge's job, as I said before, is whether or not these people are going to return to court. Now, a dismissal on some of those cases, I'm not sure the exact specifics as to what our office position was or not, but I think it's just a matter of educating them and continually letting them know what the issues plaguing the city are.
I look out over the neighborhoods, and if you go into the Lower Highlands where the arrest took place by Westford Street, you can't send your kid to the store after 6 o'clock at night. You can't take a walk with your spouse because of the prostitution issues out there. And, this is a big problem for the city. We spend a lot of money for the police. They do their job, you do your job, and it just seems like it comes right back the next day. And that was my question. Is there anything we can do to help? And if there is, please let us know.
Thank you. Senator Donahue, then Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments that were made, and first of all, thank the City Council for inviting us here. It was almost 2 years ago that we came to the City Council, and this was also in the wake of a horrific criminal sprayer situation. And at that time, the district attorney, as well as the Secretary of Public Safety and all of the partners came together to try and grapple with the problem here in the city. And again, tonight we find, and as what has been going on in the neighborhoods, of great concern, as Representative Murphy and Nangle and Golden have attested to. Make no mistake, we're very much aware of what's happening in the city. We live here, we represent the people here, and I can't help but think, going back a number of years, that was one of the reasons when I first ran for office, was because of the crime in the city, virtually in every neighborhood. And it's not something we want to see come back. Be it prostitution on the streets, or gunfire, or breaking and enterings, and you name it. And I think the police department have done an excellent job over the years dealing with the issue. When they needed more resources, the city stepped up and gave the city police department more resources. And right now, it's important that I think the residents of the city, and certainly the neighborhood groups, know that no one's sitting here saying we have a magic solution, but we are here to work on the problem and bring the partners together. And the district attorney's office has always been there trying to work together with us, as well as Secretary Heffernan's office, who Michael Coelho is here tonight as well. So that, working in partnership with the leadership of the Lowell Police Department, these are issues and problems that we've tackled in the past and will continue to work on. But I think, make no mistake about it, it requires continued, diligence and vigilance on these matters. But they're of great concern. Nobody wants to be thinking, can my youngster go out and play in the yard? Do I have to worry about that? Do I have to worry coming and going to my car in the evening hours or any time? Because I may get hit by a random, spray of bullets or something like that. So, I'm at least encouraged by, certainly, as always, the police department is on top of things in terms of the statistics. They've analyzed it. They know what's going on. They're dealing with it. But it's going to take all hands on deck in order to make sure that we keep this, not only, a safe, but one of the safest mid-sized cities, and that's, the residents deserve no less. So, I'm happy to be here. I know we all are, to hear what has to be said, and if there's suggestions that we can bring back and work on together, we're happy to do it.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Through you to the chief or the manager, I just want to make sure that we're doing enough to help you, to support you through code enforcement. Are we in the neighborhoods enough as far as enforcing the rental properties, cleaning up the streets, abandoned cars, things like that? So can we do more to support the neighborhoods, better lighting? Just as we talked in the past about having enough code enforcement with people in City Hall, are they out into the neighborhoods, and are they, checking lighting and cleanliness of the neighborhood, things like that? So anything we can do, is there enough that we're doing with UTEC and the Girls and Boys Club, the YMCA, things, organizations like that? You had a whole, on one of your slides here, all your partners. Are we doing enough to support them as a city? So that's all I wanted to add, just to make sure that, as many people have said, this is going to take the whole community. We need everybody to pitch in, do their share, and to help out. And that's the only way that we're going to help support the police and turn, I don't want to say turn the city around, but, just help pick up the areas where we've had, on the slide, where we've had the shots fired, more people, more presence, more people willing to speak up and help out. I think that's, how we're going to deal with this.
If I may, I think that, there's probably always more that can be done. I know we've talked in the past about the, getting more police officers. I think the strategy that we're pursuing now with regards to police coverage is one that's based upon a couple of different things. One is sort of the smart policing concept that we've talked about, and utilizing selective overtime to really get at problem areas at problem times. And that's a wiser use of resources, and we've given an analysis to the council before on how we utilize that. We're also using more civilian employees than we did 20 years ago to do work, getting more police officers, more of our police officers out on the street. Certainly we don't have the days that we did back in the 1990s when the federal government was out there putting more money into the COPS program to get police officers out on the street, and there's, given the fiscal cliff situation, that's in even more jeopardy, the little federal money that's out there now. So, I think in terms of our police, we're, recent council action to support moving forward, and I know there was some concerns about how that's best used, and I understand that, but I think that was an important step forward. In terms of code enforcement, that is a key part. We look upon this as a sort of needs to be a comprehensive approach to address the crime, and I'll let the chief speak to this as well. But our numbers are up in terms of the code enforcement we're doing. We are putting in place new ordinances, or have been putting in place new ordinances and new programs through development services. I think the new rental ordinance that the council approved a few weeks back, it will go a long way towards helping us get at the problems. Certainly there's more work to be done. We'll probably be coming forward to the council in the next budget with some requests for additional staffing to implement that rental code ordinance. But certainly the numbers that we're seeing, the cases that we're pursuing are showing that we have stepped it up, and it's just a matter of keeping that ball rolling. The other part of it that Council, that you mentioned was the support for UTEC, and I think an effort that the chief described, our youth development collaborative that meets on a monthly basis with the chief, other members of the department, myself, Carol Cowan as acting as chair, District Attorney Leone is there, as well as members of his staff, all of those different youth agencies, the school department, all coming to the table each and every month to talk about how we can improve our youth programming and youth development issues, whether it be for employment or recreation or support programs, has gone a long way. The delegation's support of the Shannon Grant is a key part of that. I think the council's support for a full-blown summer youth recreation program, again, keeps the youth occupied. I'd like to see if we could do more along the lines of an after-school program that we're working on, that Councilor Noon has talked about, but also what other things we can do with recreation. Hopefully we can do come back to the council with some more ideas on that. But I do think this has to be a comprehensive approach, and we're trying to do that in a way that ties together all those pieces. But I know that the inspectional services is now part of the ComStat effort, but I'll let the chief speak to his department's work with those various aspects of other city services.
Yeah, I think that the manager's accurate when he says that inspectional services is working with the police department. I think that they attend our ComStat meeting on a regular basis and will help us deal with the problem properties in the city, and that's one of the strategies we employ. Another thing that's critically important, we talk about the young people and the programs we have in place. The Safe and Successful Youth Initiative is currently in place, and that's another grant from the state, from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. This targets males 14 to 24 years of age, violent individuals, gang members, tries to connect them to services, jobs, education, counseling, and things like that. So there's always that programmatic approach taking place in addition to the law enforcement end as well. So we're working with so many different initiatives in place to try to stem the tide. And I think it's, what's fortunate about what we've seen is that those individuals who've been involved in these recent violent incidents are the older, more hardcore, incorrigible gang members. The young people, the kids, in their teens and early 20s, we're just not seeing that. So that's a positive sign. That's a good thing for the city of Lowell. And I think another good thing to point out is that you may have seen an online article in today's Sun about admittances to emergency rooms in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for drug issues, for heroin and other illicit drugs. And they talked about, despite the fact that the people are dealing with overdoses, and particularly in the southeast part of the state, and people are dying and the drug epidemic is getting worse, violent crime has dropped. And it mentioned 3 cities in particular in that article, one being Boston with a decrease of violent crime of 10% recently, the city of Springfield with a decrease of 24%, and the city of Lowell with a decrease of, I believe, over 30%. So despite this recent uptick, and something we certainly don't want to see, and we're working hard to prevent from happening in the future, we are making progress, I think, and we are moving in the right direction. But this has been a kind of a step back that we're trying to eliminate and move forward from there. And I think that one of the things that I certainly feel strongly about is these neighborhood groups and the people who live in these neighborhoods. And I'm sure that many of them want to speak tonight, so I don't want to speak too long, but their support is so important. But when I see these individuals impacted, you know, people who have their homes shot up and people put in harm's way, I'm personally very, very upset by that. When I see 12 prostitutes who are impacting the quality of life in a neighborhood, and their customers get arrested, and they're released, you know, they're basically, for the purpose of expediency, the cases are dismissed, and it just, you know, because the courts are overwhelmed. It's tragic for us, because we're trying to do the right thing, but other parts of the criminal justice system seem to be problematic in that regard. So that's basically it.
Chief, thanks for that opening, because people from some of the neighborhood groups have been patiently waiting. So I'd like to hear from some of them questions or comments. We do appreciate everybody's attendance. I've seen some hands up, and I know some of you have other commitments. So happy to hear what you have to say.
My name is Anne Marie Page. I live at 26 Fremont Street, Lowell, and I'm the new president of the Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council. We'd like to thank you all for coming here. We know how busy your schedules are, and we know some of you have to go on to something else, so we appreciate all of you being here. And there's some really big guns in the room, and I'm not talking about the ones in the holster either. That shows us you care. Now, you've had your meetings, and we have had some of our meetings. So this is our safety subcommittee that we've been waiting for, and we appreciate it. And we would like to read this letter into record. Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council. Dear City Councilors and guests, recently the members of the Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council met to discuss issues we feel need to be addressed across the entire city. Our goal in writing to you is for the city to consistently and equitably enforce existing city ordinances in order to protect the safety and quality of life for all of the citizens of the city of Lowell. In order to achieve this goal, we are requesting the City Council schedule a public safety subcommittee meeting monthly for the next 12 months. We would like each of these meetings to focus on a specific issue. We have compiled a list of recommended topics and city representatives to attend. Inspectional services, discuss current staffing levels and their ability to cover properties citywide, potential for on-call weekend coverage, define necessary inspection requirements for residential single and multifamily dwellings to include inspections at tenant turnover and at least 3 years, whichever comes first. And I believe, as you've heard the conversation going on, some of the issues we'll mention, you have mentioned. Law Department, discuss options available to landlords to remove tenants charged, convicted of drug-related crimes, similar to School Zone, who represents city in court cases related to ordinance violations. Create protocol for city to respond to illegal activities and properties throughout our city. City Council, discuss creation of public safety campaigns similar to Lights On, Crime Off, to encourage residents to contact the Lowell Police or other city departments. Zoning, to discuss clear definition and ability to determine multifamily housing. Fire Department, to discuss clear definition of parties responsible for meeting standards, tenant versus landlord. License Commission, discuss jurisdiction for liquor licenses, noise, nuisance complaints. DPD, discuss developing report containing potential neighborhood impact to License Commission prior to issuing new licenses. Police Department, discuss dispatch dialogue, necessity for callers to be asked to identify themselves, educate the public understanding of how the dispatch process works. Health Department, discuss health codes specifically related to residential, single, and multifamily dwellings. Neighborhood Services, discuss options, resources to provide interpreter services to various city departments, neighborhood groups. Recycling Department, discuss options for expanded efforts to educate tenants and expand programs in city schools. And the last one was DPW Parks and Recreation. Discuss creation of a Keep Our City Clean campaign to include education in city schools and with businesses. All of these work hand in hand with the safety of our city. Our intent for these meetings is to educate Lowell residents' understanding of how city departments' ordinances affect their neighborhoods and how each citizen can play a part in ensuring public safety and maintaining a high standard of living throughout our city. We recognize how fortunate we are to live in a city that has successfully come together during unprecedented economic stress to consolidate and create efficient delivery of services. In comparison to other like cities in the nation, our city officials and administration have not lost sight of their responsibilities to its citizens and can be proud of their achievements. However, often quoted broken window theory tells us despite their Herculean efforts and good intentions, the cracks in our city services and infrastructure are starting to show, and if left unaddressed, will continue to grow. Our communication with you is to come together. We do not let seemingly small problems grow uncontrolled. Regards from all the neighborhood leaders of all the neighborhood groups in the city of Lowell. We are requesting from the We are requesting from the Safety Subcommittee by November 31st a schedule of dates for each monthly meeting for the next year, 2013. 12 months, 12 issues, a schedule. And to all our state friends and to our federal friends, we do depend on you. We need your help to continue to support us. These men and women go out and risk their life. I pay more money to my plumber and my electrician, and he doesn't have to wear a bulletproof vest to go out the door. These people see things you don't want to see and you don't want to hear about, but they are our safety net, and they shouldn't be out there unless they have everything they need. And if you're holding the money bag, then you're the one we're going to smile at. We want to say thank you to all of you. And to our DA's office, we need somebody to tweak that word penalty and tweak that word illegal. They've got to get a little bit stricter down there with those judges. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. Other comments from members of the public? I know I saw. Sure.
Hi, my name is Rasiyan. I'm the Executive Director of the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association. I am here today with our Board President, Kevin Coughlin, sitting here, and another Board of Director, Superintendent Arthur Ryan. Our entire board is committed to public safety. We are here today just to share with you that, we're here, we want to work with the issues that are in the community. Some of the things that I want to share with you, since I took this job 2 years ago, the chief have reached out to me. I have reached out to the chief. I've spoken to the city manager. I've spoken to Councilor Nguyen. All these stuff is really needed in the community. As the new executive director, I want to make the CMA as part of the integral part to help the public safety. So I'm here today pretty much just to share with you that I'm trying to reach out to everyone to let you know that we need help too. We need to build our capacity. So as much as I want to help, I also look to, the public as well as the delegates and the city councilor, the city and the district with, I'm sorry, your department, district attorney, to your help as well, because we need to build capacity. We want to do more. I've spoken in a lot of workshop along with Bill Taylor on public safety. The chief command staff have been at the CMA. We're trying to do a lot of things, but if I'm reducing staff because of uncontrolled budget cuts, it's going to be hard for us to actually put some effort forward to help this. So I'm just saying this as in a way, the CMA is a recognized 501c3, we do a lot of work in the city. We want to do more. Some of the things that I can share with you, we can provide very good education to the community. I've heard more than one time, as in there's cultural barrier, language barrier, right? So we can help provide the education. We want to provide the right communication. We want to give out the right message. We don't want to scare people away. There have been rumors out there in the community saying that the Asian people do not complain. It's true, because we don't want to get in trouble. So we got to find a way where we're going to actually allow them to come forward and talk about some of the things that are very concerning to them. And, it's normal, not just for the Asian community as well as other ethnic groups. If you don't have the right mechanism out there, people are not going to come out and share with you what's on their mind. They might see things they're not going to share with you. So from the CMA perspective, we can collaborate with all the issues out there. We want to work with neighborhood groups. We want to, let you know that if there's anything that we can be a part of in helping out, we want to be there at the table to at least communicate on that and share with our community, because we want to keep our community safe. And we are working on a lot of issues, as in, preventative effort. One item was spoken about young people being more involved. Well, we're doing that. There's no funding for it, but we're doing it. We have a young professional group. We want to work with young professionals. They can be future leaders of Lowell. And that's what we're doing. So, this is something that it's kind of like, if there's no funding, we're not going to do anything. No, we're not thinking like that. We're thinking this is something, as a responsible citizen living in Lowell, there's something that we can do. We don't need a lot of funding. We need collaboration. And I have heard the word collaboration echo many times, and I can say it from the chief, his own word. To get things done in the community, to get things done in our city, the key word is collaboration. We need to work together because we don't have a lot of resource. So I'm here today just to share with you, if there's anything that we can do from the CMA's perspective, please don't hesitate to contact me or my board president or my board of director. Okay? Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ahn. That's very helpful, and we appreciate the offer. I don't, anyone else, members of the public, that want to be heard? All right. I know Mr. Quayle, I don't want to put, oh, go ahead. Come on, Dave.
Evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Just one question. If there's a habitual landlords that keep renting to drug dealers and people who have gang members or deal drugs, all this other stuff, is there a way to find them, just like we do, like if an alarm goes off at present of the pastime? So if you have alarms go off in your city, you get fined after the third or fourth time. So if we have landlords who aren't proactive and keep renting, and problem landlords, is there a way to get them fined so that we take the profit out of being a landlord? Just a question.
Well, let me just, I know that the initiative the chief spoke about with the inspectional services attending the Comstat meetings is a fairly new development. So I think that's at least one way to stay on top of what the problem properties are. As to what the enforcement mechanisms are, there are multiple mechanisms, but I think IDing the property as a problem is an important first step, and I think we've at least put a mechanism in place to do that better than we've been doing in the past.
I'm not so much talking about the building itself, it's more for like the people that they keep having in there, because like across the street from me, I've had gunshots fired from below my window into that house years ago. We've had all kinds, I think one time in a matter of a few months, there was 90 911 calls to that address. So those landlords are not proactive. It's not even having to do with stairs or structure, it's just the landlords themselves need to be told that you cannot continue this in our fine city.
Mr. Manager.
Those people need to be addressed.
Well, if I may, I think we can as a law department to take a look at that. I do think that they're probably, I'll put on my make-believe lawyer's hat, though, and say that I'm not sure what exactly we would cite them with. They haven't really broken the law, their tenants have. They may be just a bad selector of tenants. On the other hand, they may just be in for the fast buck, no doubt about that. But to my knowledge, that isn't necessarily a crime, but we can certainly investigate that and see. I think that actually speaks to one of Ms. Page's comments, or one of the topics neighborhood groups have come up with. And there may be some things we can do along those lines, but I think more likely what happens in those cases is people who are in it just for the fast buck are also the ones that aren't maintaining their properties, and those are the ones, as Chairman Meyer just said, are the ones, those houses, those properties, those people are the ones that get picked up in the ComStat meetings, and the ones then that we aggressively go after for code violations. But certainly we can explore some of the other aspects of that as well. I just don't want to raise people's expectation that that's something that's easy to do.
Because I know this house has been there for quite a while, and it's probably the Walmarts of the drugs in our area.
Right.
That gets them to everywhere. So, and the landlord just runs it blindly, and gets away with it all the time.
If there's, and there may be situations, I don't know about that situation, but there may be others where the landlord is complicit in all of this. That becomes a criminal matter. That's where the police can go after.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to, Joe Hungler, I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club, and I live at 178 Lou Street here in Lowell. I just wanted to make a point of, we appreciate the support of the Shannon Grant, and want to talk about how important that is. The Chief and I had a conversation the other day about making sure, even with the violence, we also pay attention to the long-term issue of continuing to pay attention to the youth to make sure that we continue the good work that's happened over the last number of years of pushing this to an older age group. So these are the people who are coming back, as opposed to if we shift all our resources there and away from the youth, then all of a sudden the next generation comes up as people who can't do that. And part of what the Shannon Fund has done, at least for the Boys and Girls Club, is we were able to extend our hours, be open until 8 o'clock at night. We're now serving about 280 kids a night, which is significantly more than we have in the past, and it's making a big difference. And those kids are kids that aren't out doing other things that could be getting them into trouble. And the other thing I just wanted to comment on is that one of the things that I really appreciate from the police that you don't get in every community is the communication that happens and the collaboration that happens through the Lowell Youth Development Collaborative, which is also city manager and the DA's office. But that communication is huge for all the different agencies. I feel like we're partners with UTEC and with a lot of the other agencies in town and the police, not just silos. And that comes from the leadership in the city. And I just want to make sure that we continue to look at the long-term view as well as our short-term needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathleen Marson, 200 Market Street, and I'm actually not speaking on behalf of my group, but just myself as a taxpayer. And my concern only is that, I think there's something that the City Council can do here that you may be overlooking, and that's priorities. About a month ago, you had a complaint from a resident of Andover Street and who couldn't sleep at night, and 9 years to fix the street, and no one asked how much does it cost. 8 years I've been trying to get a light. 8 years. It's too expensive. In the last 6 months, within 500 feet of where that light is not, there's been 26 crimes. I looked up all of your addresses on crime. I use crime mapping too. it's zero, except for the mayor. There were quite a few in his. So I just want to be sure that the city council is prioritizing how we're spending. Youth programs are great. You know, there's so many things that you do and that, you know, that you're in favor of that really help this problem. But priorities are important in a situation where resources are short. 10 years, 2 wars, we all know now, you know, the whole leaner army thing, it doesn't work. So I think priorities just have to come first. And I'm not sure one person not being able to sleep versus 26 crimes is the right priorities. Thank you.
Councilor?
If I may comment on the last speakers, about, I would say 2 months ago, I filed motions pertaining to the issue of drive-by shot fire at the Highlands, and Henry Merchants is looking into it and did install a number of lights in the Highlands. And of course, we can always go back to revisit the area that the speaker before the last speaker spoke of, and maybe Henry's and through the managers to help address that issues as well. Thank you.
If I may, I believe Mr. Marchand can correct me on that we are working on putting a light in there now. There have been a number of issues, but Ms. Morrison is correct in terms of, you know, making those priority decisions. We are trying to do that, and I know we did it up in the Lower Highlands area with those street lights, and but hopefully very soon that light will be there.
Okay, I did want to give Mr. Coelho a chance to speak if you're interested. Not to put you in the spot, but we appreciate you coming this way. And if maybe you could just go to the microphone. But the question I would have is, you know, we think we do things better here in Lowell than elsewhere around the state, although I guess we're always open to hear about new strategies and things that may have worked elsewhere that we could make use of. So I don't know if you have any comments in that regard. I know there was some headlines about, you know, a city between here and Boston that had similar outbreaks of shootings and things that, you know, when I read the news accounts of that, seemed everything they were putting in place were things we were already doing here.
Yes.
But if you've got any suggestions for us or comments, thank you for coming.
Yep.
And thank Ms. Heffernan for her efforts, but happy to hear what you could add.
Sure. My name is Mike Coelho. I'm with the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. Secretary Heffernan asked me to come down today. The good news is that the City of Lowell is well positioned because you do a lot of the right things here in the City of Lowell. We see Lowell as a model for how things should be done in other cities across the state. The Shannon Grant especially, we had asked the City of Lowell and the Lowell Police Department, all the community-based organizations, to present to the governor and the Anti-Crime Council several years ago. We think so highly of what we do in Lowell, we actually stole the person that helped manage the Shannon Grant program. Jen Ball now works for us at the Executive Office of Public Safety. And so as upsetting and as challenging recent events may be, the city is well positioned to receive funds that we administer. The Shannon Grant application is up right now. Lowell submitted already a letter of intent. It was good to get the feedback that we want to make sure we have maximum flexibility with the Shannon Grant, and so it addresses the needs that the city's currently needs to address. And so we'll work with the city to make sure that occurs, and work with Mary Ann, who's a terrific advocate for the city. We also want to come up here and thank the state delegation for their leadership when it comes to advocating for funds like Shannon and for the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative. Shannon has had some up and downs through the economic times, but it has never been cut completely, and that's a real testament to the Lowell delegation. And in fact, $2 million more was put in this year for Shannon. Last year we're at about $4 million, and we're getting up to about 6.5 this year. And that's a real testament to the leadership of the Lowell delegation. Lowell Safe and Successful Youth Initiative is a newer program. Lowell again submitted a terrific application. They received the third highest award in the state of about $900,000. And so as we look to protect these funds, especially if it looks like economic times are coming to hit us again, the city's doing a lot of things right. And the things we can always do better. But I can tell you from Secretary Heffernan's perspective, She has a lot of faith and confidence in the folks in Lowell, the community-based organizations, the leadership of the delegation and Lowell Police Department, so that whatever funds we have available, we know gets put to good use here in Lowell. And so we want to continue to be a partner. One of the things that the chief highlighted as a weakness in our criminal justice system is reentry, that some of the spike that's occurred in crime are folks coming out of jail, older, maybe have done some mandatory minimum sentences for violent crime or gun crime, coming back out, going back to old ways. And so, again, the delegation here is working hard to provide us with funding and leadership to address the reentry issues of the Department of Correction. And we want to continue to work with the chief to make sure that we get a better sense of what's happening exactly in Lowell. And we can work with our Department of Correction, identify inmates coming out where the county of origin, city of origin is Lowell, and see if we can do a better job in the handoff, as they say, coming out of state prison and back into community. So we look forward to working with everyone here, and we're available to come anytime to discuss what resources are available, both from state agencies as well as through grant programs.
Well, thank you, and we'd appreciate that assistance, and we're appreciative of things you've done to date, too.
Great.
So thanks very much. Any other members of the public or members of the subcommittee or council? Anything to add? Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be remiss not saying, only if you live outside of Lowell, you know how good a police force you have through smart policing. You get, being in the council for 9 months, you look at the travel that the Lowell police representative went to other states, not just here in Massachusetts, went to other states to give a presentation as to why it's working Lowell, all the things they've done, smart policing, the partnership and whatnot. And so that said, I know that more can be done, and we should do it together. I noticed that the discussion about short-term and long-term, I know short-term has been a investigation, aggressive prosecution, and then long-term, Joe from the Boy and Girl Club mentioned, and I know the chief has a list here, and one of which we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago with the senator that the PAL project, the police activity leak, in conjunction with UTEC and everything else. So certainly we have a lot in places, and you know what, we need to understand that the key to this is to information and communication and partnership, to combat these issues of gang and violence in our city. So I'm sure together we can, resolve a lot of these issues, and we need to be a little patient, I guess. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Chief and Madam Assistant District Attorney, I know this is no easy solution, but to me, the paramount issue present, the common denominator is the access, the availability, and the use of guns. I don't want to be back here in 2 years, and I know it's a very, very difficult obstacle to get new gun laws. But unless how do we present an argument to our delegation so we're not sending them down again to file a bill that is not going to go anywhere? I say to present an argument, present an issue, look, this is why we need more, different, better gun laws, is to show them the reason why. Not so much the shooting, but the access, the number of guns in the city.
Mm-hmm.
How do we quantify that? Because I think whenever I want to be convinced of something, show me the numbers, show me why, not just, oh, we need guns, it's, on the other side, well, it's not, it's bullets that kill people, not guns. I think it's a real issue. But how do we make progress on this rather than just leaving and saying, okay, we know guns are a problem. We know it's a political issue that, it's not going to go anywhere, but how do we at least do due diligence and say, look, there's so many guns we have in the city. I mean, I would like to know, and I don't know, I don't expect a finite number, but you tell us how many you take off the streets. How many do you feel are out there?
Yeah.
And I don't want to send a scary message, but I think it's important to know what is out there and why we need to do something about it.
Well, I think that in order for us to be successful in that endeavor, there needs to be a community-wide mobilization. It needs to start with the leadership in the city, with our delegation. The urban chiefs, the group I belong to, see gun violence in our communities all the time, but it's difficult for us to convey that message to some of the communities in the state where gun violence is not a major issue, and those state representatives there don't see that as a concern they wouldn't want to be in a position that would cause them to be vilified, as Representative Murphy was when he proposed the law about just securing someone's home, which to me, as I said, is a common sense measure. I couldn't help but think when you were just discussing that, Councilor Elliott, when I watched the presidential debate and they asked both candidates, Romney and Obama, about the ban on the high-capacity weapons, some of the firearms that have been used in some of these horrific shootings across the country. And their response was, both of them, was basically, we have the gun laws that we already have. So it's very difficult for me to come up with an answer for you, to be quite honest with you. I wish there was an easier answer to this problem. We do have less gun violence in this state than most states because of the laws we have, but it continues to plague cities like Lowell and others because the guns are easily accessible and available. And, we work with our federal partners, our state partners, to take guns off the street all the time. But the laws have been passed to secure weapons in their homes, to keep them under lock and key. But it appears to me, little impact. The guns are just available. There needs to be some type of community mandate, some type of uprising, so to speak, from the people in the community who would speak out against these weapons and to try to control them better than we have been doing.
I think Representative Murphy had a comment on this issue, too.
We don't need any further message. The City Council has unanimously given us that message. The city administration, through the city manager and the superintendent of police, have given us that message. But more importantly, David, Tommy, Eileen, and myself live here in the city of Lowell. We live in the neighborhoods where this violence and where this gunfire is taking place. And we know people who are being impacted by it. So we've fought for this. We didn't get it through this legislative session, but rest assured we're going to fight even harder next legislative session. And the message is clear, and we'll make sure that we impress upon people that we live in this city, we endure those types of traumas, and we're going to fight to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
So, Chief, that group, that coalition of urban chiefs that you meet with,
Right.
is that not a good opportunity or a good starting point to have those chiefs in those communities initiate a process, a movement in urban centers? Because that's where the strength is, and I believe if those chiefs can do what you're doing and what we're doing with our delegation, then there is strength in urban centers.
We actually had that discussion, and for example, in Boston, Mayor Menino is in concert with Mayor Bloomberg from New York City, leads a group of mayors against gun violence, and they've had some success. And I've actually talked about the legislation that we proposed. Representative Murphy addressed the group. He came to the major city chiefs and spoke with those individuals. And the consensus was that that is a great idea. However, they felt that it would be futile to attempt to do this because of the gun lobby, because of the sentiment in the Commonwealth. They have banged their head against the wall on so many occasions and come up empty-handed. see that this is almost like a no-win situation, unfortunately, when it comes to increasing the penalties and the other restrictions on firearms in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's very unfortunate. It really is. And I mean, people will read Rob Mills' story about this meeting tonight in tomorrow's paper, and if my comments are mentioned in the Sun, there'll be individuals who will light up that blog and say, what an idiot I am, because I have these views about the restrictions of firearms, because they are, the Second Amendment there's no gray area there, it's black and white. And that's how a lot of these people feel. It's very unfortunate. And the people who are, accessing the guns, the criminal element, and they agree with that, but how do we keep the guns away from them? That's the major concern, and there are a lot of theories about that, and I just think that they're so easily accessible because so many guns are out on the streets, and people have them, and then they're stolen.
So, Chief, do you have any idea, like ballpark, how many guns you feel there could be
there's
in the city?
hundreds of firearms, illegal firearms in the city. I mean, there have been years when we've taken well over 100 guns off the streets from the criminal element. So I'm sure that, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of firearms in the city, and in other cities, other urban areas as well, in the Commonwealth.
Look, Chief, I understand your point. There'll be people criticizing that for Second Amendment rights. But to me, nothing affects public trust more and incites more concerns than gun violence. And I'll sit here week after week, month after month, defending the need for stricter laws with you and your staff, and take the heat from gun owners, because all you have to think about, and I do, if that were me, what would I expect the leaders, my elected officials, the leadership, to do? And we know the root of the problem, and how we get there is going to be a struggle.
Yeah, there's a great deal of discourse and difference of opinion on that issue. There's no doubt about it.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's probably irrelevant, but talking about anticipated crime or whatever, I'm wondering what the passage of question 3 would have in the community here. That's what's scaring me.
Well, I think everybody knows my feelings on question 3, and some people criticize that opinion, but the bottom line is this. The marijuana, in my opinion, the passage of question 3 is a progression. In other states that have seen medicinal marijuana passed, they're now on the ballot full legalization, and I think it just passed in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. So that is the premise here, to move towards full legalization. Now, some people say that marijuana is a gateway drug, some people say it's not, but I do know this. There are more people in treatment for marijuana than any other drug. There are more people who have, because the THC, the active ingredient in the marijuana, has become much more powerful than it once was. It's become a drug that many people have grown dependent on, and to the point maybe of addiction. I don't know, some people will argue that point. But having these medicinal marijuana locations in Middlesex County, and I'm sure that Lowell will be one of the locations that will be targeted, could there be other crimes related to the location of that dispensary in the city? Potentially, yes. It's a cash and carry business. People were coming in with money, be walking, could they potentially be robbed? Will there be, I was just talking with a gentleman who told me that he was in another state, and he drove by a young man standing on the sidewalk holding up a big sign outside. Get your $70, get your prescription here, come in and see Dr. So-and-so. That's what we're facing in the Commonwealth, unfortunately. I think down the road, you're going to see that, I don't think anybody in law enforcement or anybody who opposed question 3 is concerned about the drug being available to legitimate people who suffer from cancer and glaucoma and AIDS and other debilitating diseases. It's the 90% who get a prescription or approval for things like a bad back or a headache or something that's not as critical as those other diseases. And I would think that Senator Donahue could probably answer the question about what the legislature could do to, the Senate could do to impose some type of restrictions on this recently passed law.
Just briefly, and I know my colleagues may want to chime in on this. This was, I know, Councilor Mercer, you were at the meeting when the chief and I both spoke on this. It did pass. It even passed in the city of Lowell. I just checked the numbers in terms of the passage. But make no mistake, there still remains a number of unanswered questions despite the passage of the ballot question. And the Department of Public Health is charged with coming up with some of the regulations and so forth that the very same Department of Public Health that is at issue concerning some of the, the crime lab in testing that seems to be overwhelmed, right now in that area. As well as the monitoring of the injections that have caused a whole lot of problems for people across the country. So this is yet another obstacle, I would say, and hurdle for the in terms of the regulations. There's really no guidance in the ballot question. There's also, as I said, a lot of unanswered questions. How much is a supply? What's a one-day supply? What's a 60-day supply? What do they mean by growers, and who would that be? Zoning issues are going to be a big issue for communities because it's silent on where these, distribution centers, the 35 distribution centers, could be located. There is an effort and a request out there to delay the implementation of this law to give communities an opportunity to enact zoning requirements. You may not want a dispensary next to a school or a playground or a number of things. So I would expect that when the legislature is back in session, the appropriate committee will be taking this matter up. They have their hands full looking right now on the issues, as I said, having to do with the crime lab and the drug testing, as well as the monitoring of the injection issue. So, this is yet another matter. So I think it's going to, though the question passed, I think you will see the legislature delving into this in further detail. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions at this point.
Anybody else on this topic? Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions concerning the subject matter of the meeting? I do want to thank everybody for coming, particularly the residents and neighborhood leaders that attended. Certainly thank you to Senator Donahue, Representative Golden, Representative Nangle, Representative Murphy. Thank you for being here. Members of the police department, certainly Sister District Attorney Crystal, thank you for your attendance. And Mr. Coelho, happy to have all your thoughts. I guess the subcommittee, with a number of suggestions raised tonight, will take those under advisement and continue to be diligent on this issue. I think, the public should get the message simply from the attendance here, both from elected appointed officials and residents, that this is something the city council and all the city leaders take very seriously. And we faced these issues before, and we've combated them successfully, and we will continue to do that. There's no magic theory that's going to solve everything, but we will continue to do the number of different things that we think are effective and stay diligent on this issue so that the quality of life in our neighborhoods remains at the high level that we've worked to achieve. So thank you all for your attendance, and there'll be more to come on this issue. Thanks very much. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Meeting stands adjourned.